Hello Steelers, and welcome to this game of Through the Mud and the Blood by the Two Fat Lardies. In this game I'm playing a cavalry action in the First World War. Just to show you there is a slight difference to the First World War wargaming. It doesn't always have to be trenches or trench raids or small skirmishes and things. This is actually an attack by the 20th Deccan Horse during the Battle of the Somme on the 14th of July, which was fought during the successful attack on Bazentin Ridge, a early morning attack that happened 2 weeks after the disastrous 1st of July, where in this particular battle all the objectives were captured pretty quickly, more or less. Really successful. Shows you that they learned very quickly from the original attack 2 weeks previously. This is one of the very, I think only of two horse charges during the, horse operations during the Battle of the Somme. This was the first one, the other one is later in September when the tanks were introduced. But this was the Secundabad Brigade had brought forward units at High Wood, as you can see over here, and this is the 20th Deccan Horse, Indian soldiers fighting on the British side, Indian cavalry. They were also fighting alongside the 7th Dragoon Guards, who were on the other side. These were on their flank. And both of them attacked very successfully a cavalry charge into German positions. The area wasn't particularly smashed up at this point because this was German second line positions and hadn't been affected by the 1st of July fighting yet. High Wood gets smashed up later on in the battle, but right now it was still a pretty thick wood on the 14th of July. There's a lot of controversy really, I suppose, about this particular action, that the cavalry were too late to exploit the success of the infantry earlier on. However, the issue really lies not so much with the cavalry and the myth that they were finding it difficult to get across trenches and broken ground, which they weren't. They were in their positions at 7 AM in the morning. The attack went in about 1900 hours that afternoon and lasted till about 9 o'clock. But the real issue was the fact that they weren't communicated with properly because telephone wires hadn't been laid. There wasn't enough wire around. There was it had been cut by German artillery, and they were basically hoping getting messages through runners and signal lamps and things like that. So, as with everything in the First World War, once the infantry were in position, it was really difficult just to have any kind of communications with them once the attack had started. So they basically, the 20th Deccan, were sticking to their plan of attack, which had been outlined earlier, and they were kind of waiting for the infantry to finish their battle before they went in. This charge in particular was through cornfields, we've got laid out here, with attack the Germans. They captured a lot of prisoners. I think it was over 100 prisoners in this particular attack, with very, very few losses to the horses as well. So it showed that cavalry could fight in a modern war against infantry, even against machine guns and with artillery fire. However, in the First World War, this is not really how cavalry were generally used. They were generally used as mobile infantry, so they would move forward to a position, dismount and then fight as infantry. The cavalry had also served time in the trenches in the previous years of the First World War, so they were fully aware of how this war was progressing. These weren't an anachronistic unit from the 19th century. They were a fully modern, integrated, combined arms weapon within the British Army, at least in the First World War. And in 17 and 18 they were definitely used as that. They'd already trained with armoured cars in 1916 before the Battle of the Somme, so when the tanks were introduced they were also ready to integrate with those very quickly as well, a lot quicker than the infantry in some cases. A lot of this information is from Horsemen in No Man's Land by my friend Dave Kenyon. This is well worth buying if you've got any slight interest in the First World War. It's based, Dave is my mate, but it is also based off his PhD thesis, so it is absolutely crammed with academic rigour, and it really goes through. I think it's probably the only single volume on the cavalry in the First World War, or at least modern single volume on the cavalry in the First World War that looks in great detail at how they were operating and how their roles shifted throughout the war and what they were used for. Well worth buying. If I remember, I'll stick a link in the description down below, so do check it out. What I'll do, as always, I'll show you the setup of the table. I'll talk about some of the things I'm going to use, because it's going to be a slightly different game of Through the Mud and the Blood with the cards, and then we'll just get on with the game and see if the Second Bad Cavalry can be as successful as they were on the 14th of July 1916. Alright, well, first things first, these are the German defenders. So we've got 3 sections, each of 9 rifles with a corporal fighter. Each of these are status 1, so we've got 1, 2 and 3, and then they are also commanded by their Hauptfeldwebel Kurt Schmitz, and he's a status 3. Now, as you may have seen the other Through the Mud and Blood games, it's played with cards. So these are the units that are drawn, and they activate in that turn until you've drawn the time for a snifter card. What I'm doing here slightly differently, so I've got the British already, because they're already on the table. I'm doing this kind of solo, almost pure solo. I've already got the British units in there. But what I've also done is I've put in the German blinds, because the Germans are going to be on the table as blinds. When the German blinds cards come up, the Germans can decide either if they want to activate a unit and deploy them on the table, or if they just want to carry on doing what they're doing, which is hiding in the cornfields. For this, I've got a second deck of cards, so this will be used here, and this is actually made up of the names of the Germans. You can see here there's the different guys, and I've also put in these other cards as well. I didn't have many blank cards. What I've got is I've got blank card, the wind direction, a couple of others as well, random events and abysmal terrain. I'm going to ignore what they say and just treat all of these as blank cards, because what I'm going to do is, when the British have spotted one of the German blinds, which are already on the table, I'll draw a card from this deck, and if it is a unit, they will deploy on that blind. If it is a blank or one of the weird cards, then it will be nothing. So I will just remove that blind. So we're not entirely sure where the Germans are at this point. The Germans also, as I say, if they decide on the draw of their blinds card, if they want to deploy a unit, they will also draw from this deck as well, and if they draw a unit, they will deploy that unit. So that's basically how it's going to play. I'll show you what I mean on the tabletop itself now. It's just a way of randomising the German deployment, so the British or the Indians don't know where they are. And I'm afraid I don't have any Indian named cards, so we're just going to have to pretend that these are Indian names, Albert Plastow and Frank Blackwall and all the rest of them. So we're just going to have to remember their Sikh names instead. So here we have the Deccan horse, the 20th Deccan horse, or at least one troop of it. This is units I've been painting over the last few weeks, so I wanted to get them on the tabletop. And these, I've already, as I say, these are already on the table anyway. What they're wanting to do is really get out onto that tabletop and scout out these German blinds. So the Germans have already got, there is one blind for every card in the German deck. So they will either be a blank or they will be a unit. And as I say, when the German blinds come up, the Germans can decide whether they want to deploy. If there's a unit getting close by, they can see, you know, if they want to deploy onto the table to actually do some fighting. It's not just down to the British spotting them, or I keep saying British, I mean the Indians spotting them. We've got the Germans here in front of High Wood. High Wood itself is not passable for the cavalry, so if the Germans do decide to move into it, then the cavalry can't get to them. And this was a charge, so the cavalry, if they want to, they can stop and dismount and fight as infantry, but in the real battle they didn't, so it's probably not going to happen. They're going to try to locate and destroy as many of these German units as possible. So that's pretty much the table, really. I've said as well, this the crops don't give cover but when they're spotting, they're obviously going to be in some kind of cover, but when they're actually fighting, they're still going to be classed as being in the open. So if the cavalry can get into them, they're still going to do quite a lot of damage, I would have thought. But then the Germans have got those rifles that they can fire against them as well. So it's all to play for at this point, and let's see what happens. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the cards. I'm not going to go through every single card drawn every single turn, but just to show you, you know, again, the opening action really. So first of all, we draw from our British deck, and we've got Corporal Frank Cable. He's a status 1, so he's one of our corporals, so he could move on his own. I'm not entirely sure whereabouts he is actually. He's on the right flank, I just checked. I don't want to move him. I want to move the formation under the lieutenant, so he's going to hold and just do nothing at this point. We want to get that whole formation moved forward under the lieutenant, like I say. So we've got the Up and Atom, which is a bonus move, which is any unit that hasn't moved yet any unit that has already moved may also move again, but because they are a formation, they're not individual units, I'm not going to use it. Second Lieutenant Henry Will, there we go, status 3, he can now get that formation moving. Because he is the platoon leader, he's able to do that, and they're still within formation. As soon as they get fired, they will break formation, and then they will become individual units. So I'm going to get these moved, and I'll show you where we're at with that. So Lieutenant Henry Millwall has managed to get his men forward. He's used one action dice to do this, so they've all moved forward together in a formation. Horses have 3 speeds. They can either go at a walk, at a trot, or a gallop. These are at the trot. They can start off at the trot because they are, you know, already in the action. They don't have to speed up. If they were stopped, they would have to go to a walk and then to a trot. Or the next thing they could do is go to a gallop. That's giving them 2 dice of movement plus 3 pips for each dice, so that was a plus 6. I think they rolled 11 or something, so they've had about 17 inches of movement. So they've still got an extra action dice each of these units to spend, which they are going to spend on spotting. So these 2 blinds here are in the open, and they are actually within automatic spotting distance. These 2 over here are within a diced spotting distance. So what I'm going to do is, this is the German deck, so just to show you, I am going to shuffle it up again just to make sure, and I'm going to deal out the particular cards to these units here. I haven't looked at them yet, so I don't know what they are. So that's that one. We'll reveal it in a second. This is this one, and what I'll do is I'll try to spot these 2 with these 2 units of cavalry. They need an 8 or above because of the distance, and these are stationary. So the first one, 8 on double 6, 4, so these haven't been spotted. And then this one over here, again 8 on double 6, 5, so they haven't spotted them either. So the only ones we've spotted are these 2 units here. So what we do is we flip the cards. This is, like I say, I don't know what the German blinds are going to be. We flip the cards and we just see what is revealed. So first up, we've got Gefreiter Hermann Lang. So unfortunately these guys are out in the open down here. And wind direction, so that's a blank, so we can get rid of that. And what I'll do is I'll set up Gefreiter Lang and his men, and they will probably fire as they've now been revealed at those horses, but they're in a pretty sticky situation straight away. Okay, I had a look at the Rangers, and the Germans are only going to get 12 inches, which is the other side of that hill, so they're just going to fire. If they can cause shock and kills on the cavalry as they come in, it's going to lessen the impact when the cavalry do hit them. So we're hitting on 3s and above because they're close range. So that is, that's everything apart from 1, so that's 8 hits. They are killing on 5 and 6, but they are also shocking on a 1 to a 3, I think. Let me just check that. No cover, yes, 2, 3, 4 is a shock, 5, 6 is a kill. So let's see, get rid of that 1, that's out. That is good shooting there from the Germans. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hits and 1 shock. So let's see if one of those hits is on our corporal. This is Albert Plasto. 1 to 6, and it is. No, it isn't. So it's just 6 of the horses straight away. So good. That has reduced their number massively. Maybe this charge wasn't so good after all. But we'll and I'll put that shock on, and we'll move on. So we're still on the Germans' blinds. The question is, do they want to deploy or try to deploy any more troops on this roll? I think I'm going to, just to test it out if nothing else. So they're going to try and deploy here to see what this is. So as I said before, we basically draw the top card, see what it is. And it's a blank card, so we get rid of that and the card itself, so we can't draw that again. So that's gone. So at least that eases the Indians' mind. So that's all the Germans have done on their blind card. So we are now on to Bert Bromley, the status 1. He has nothing he can do. What we need is Albert Plasto really to be able to reduce that shock. So I'll keep drawing. Status 1 British Command Initiative, so we'll pull that to one side so they could use that. And Sergeant Blackwall, he could reduce shock, but he's not attached to that particular unit with Plasto, so I'm waiting for Albert Plasto's card to come up. Let's see, time for a snifter, so that ends it. The British or the Indians can't reduce that shock, so we shuffle everything back in together and start to draw again. So let me just do this quickly, take you through this. Now what we're hoping for here on the Indian side is to be able to activate at least one of those units in the formation so they can pile into those Germans before the Germans get another shot off, because if they destroy that section of horses, that's cutting the Indians down by a quarter immediately. So let's just see what happens. So we've got Stated 2 British Command, so that can be used by the sergeant or the lieutenant. Time for a snifter. Straight up, nothing happened in that one, so nobody was able to do anything. The Germans can fire though, because they haven't moved. I think that's the only thing that can happen. So, this might be bad for the cavalry. So they're going to fire again at that section, or what remains of it. So we've got our firing again. The British, the Indians, I'm not allowing to fire because they're already at the counter speed, so they're too fast to be able to fire. The Germans I'm allowing to fire over here. Less hits this time. Well, say that, still 7 hits on those remaining 2 men, so let's just see what happens to them. 5 6s are kills. So we've got actually not a single kill, but a lot of shock. We've got 1 2 3 4. I'll get rid of the 3 shock on there, so that's 4 shock, so that means they are going to have to retreat. So they've taken hits, but at least they haven't been wiped out, so they will retreat back. I'll set them up and we'll move on to the next turn. Well, our battered British unit has fallen back 4 inches, so we'll go back to drawing cards. German blinds. Do they want to try to bring anybody onto the table? I think they do, so let's do that, see what happens. Well, this time on the blinds, the Germans are wanting to reveal this one here, so we'll just see what it is. It is Gefreiter Franz Adler, status 1, so they can appear and they can start shooting as well. So let's see if that does any more damage than the previous German section did. So we've got Franz Adler and his men. They're going to fire across here at the front section here, of course, hitting on a 3 and above, so that is again a lot of hits, and they are in the open. So those 5s and 6s are killing. 2 pluses shock. Let's see, 1 2 3 4 kills this time, and 2 shock on those horses there. Let's see if that any of those hits are on their corporal. 4, yes, he is hit. And what happens to him? A 2, he is wounded, I think, lightly wounded. Okay, so after another heavy hit from the infantry and lightly wounding another junior leader, a corporal, we are on to Frank Cable's turn. So let's see who Frank Cable is and what he can do. Well, Frank Cable has led his men, wounded as he is, into action against these. This is the only thing we can really do, is just pile them straight into the Germans. They're rolling 8 dice. 5s and 6s are hits, 5s being shock, 6s being kills. The Germans are rolling 14 dice, but it shows you there's only 5 men there really attacking 10 men, so they've still got a decent number for attacking as cavalry, and that is a decent number of kills and shock. So they've killed 4, caused 3 shock, and then that 1 is got rid of. So let me just get that 3 shock down on the Germans first of all before they roll their dice. And we said we're taking 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 kills. Let's see if one of those kills is on their corporal. 6, no it's not, so it's just one of the other rifles, so that's reduced them straight down to 6 men. Sorry, I've taken 4 off already. But the Germans re-roll, see what happens with theirs. Again looking for 6s, and that's a cocked dice there. Well, it's going to roll onto a 6, so I'm going to keep it. And we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 shock and only 1 kill. Yes, that's right, so let me just get rid of those. Let's see if that 1 kill is on Bromley himself. 3, no it isn't, so it's one of the other troops. And also 4 shock on them, so that takes them up to 6. So that means they've lost their bottle anyway, so they are going to retreat. The Germans, on the other hand, they have lost by 3, so they're thrown back 12 inches. They're facing the enemy and add a further 2 shock points per group, and they can only fire in their next turn, so that takes them up to 5 shock and they're 12 away. Cavalry also pursue a broken fleeing enemy. In this case they've got more shock, so they're going to retreat themselves, they'll just fall back a bit, but the Germans have fallen back all the way over their 12 inch. So I'll get those set up. So a relatively successful cavalry charge even for a broken unit like that. So that was our first successful cavalry charge led by Frank Cable. Let's see what happens next. Herman Lang and his men, are they going to fire at the next units behind? I think they probably will do. So Herman Lang and his mates are going to be firing at these behind. So let's have a look. 3 clusters of hits, and this time yes we have hits again, quite a lot, and they're in the open, so we're killing on 5s and 6s, shock on 2 or above. So that's 3, 4, 5 kills. Oh, this is awful. And 1 shock. They are taking a heavy toll on these cavalry. 5 kills. Let's see if one of those is on Bert Bromley. 9. No it isn't, so it's 5 of the cavalry. Let's get rid of these. 4, 5. There we go. So that's them down. So, oof. This is pretty bad for the cavalry at the moment. They are taking a right hammering. See who's up next. Sergeant Frank Blackwall, so he can do some leading into battle. I think he's going to. He's probably going to get one of the units close to him to actually attack as well, to stop this hail of bullets coming in, and let's see what he does with that. So we've got another cavalry charge led by Sergeant Frank Blackwall. They're hitting the Germans here. The Germans are on 14 dice, the British are on 15, so no, 16 against 15, and 5s and 6s are kills. Let's have a look. So we're looking at 1, 2, this is on the Germans, 2 kills, 1 shock. Oh, if they stand this, the British cavalry are going to get battered in their first ever game. Let's see what happens. They have killed they have killed a lot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 2 shock on the cavalry there. So let's just see, let's put those shock on first of all for everybody, then we'll see who has been hit and who hasn't been hit. So that's on the cavalry there, and then 1 shock on those Germans. Let's see if the German corporal's been hit. 1 or 2 he has. 2, yes he has, so we roll again, see what happens to him. A 3, he is lightly wounded, so I have my marker there, so I'll put these drop down to status 0, so he's no part in the game. But they have lost another man, so that's 2 kills. I've already taken him off. The British have lost 5 and they're 2 shock, so let's see if that hit is on one of their big men. 6, no it isn't, so it's just on 5 troops, but they have lost by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They have lost by 3 on that one. They are thrown back by 24 inches because they're cavalry. They take 2 extra shock, so I'll get those set up. So a relatively unsuccessful cavalry attack again. Okay, it was a time for the snifter card, but also we pulled out Lieutenant Henry Millwall's card as well, and also a command initiative for him. So what he's done is he's managed to get these guys back here, is reduce shock off one of these groups, and they're going to try to form up. Now they're behind this hill, so they can't actually be fired at the moment unless the Germans move, and I'm going to try to form them into a new group and lead them back into the attack again. Right, back to the cards pulling, so let's see what happens. Got German blinds. Do the Germans want to try to bring on their last section? Yes, they're going to, I think. They need to. So we've got the 3 remaining German blinds. I'm just going to put these cards down on them so we know which is which and see what they are. So the first one over here, this is Schmitz, so that is a section. His card will go back in. Over here we have abysmal terrain, so that's just a blank. And then finally we have Gefeiter Hamstürmer, so that's the other section as well. Sorry, no, this is the Feldwebel, isn't it? So that's their officer, and they have another section over here. So they've just shown up the flanks at least. Alright, with the deployment of their last section, they're going to fire at the remains of this British section here, hitting on 4 and above because they are now at effective range. So that is only 2 hits, thankfully, for the Indians. Let's see that they are in the open, so 5s and 6s are killing. So 2 4s is 2 more shock on those horses, so that's going to force them back even further. I've just drawn Hermann Lang's card. I'd forgotten actually he was a status 1 and he dropped a status because he was lightly wounded. So 2 of his men are helping him off the table, where we have to see if another big man steps forward to take up his position, otherwise they are left leaderless. And a 4 to 6 they will. 6, yes they have. So another big man has stepped forward and he has ordered the unit, he will order the unit to fall back over the hill if they can. Right, this might be the last hurrah of the British cavalry. What's happened is they've had the status initiatives and they pulled out their corporals who were able to reduce shock and then also form the remains of the 2 groups into one group as well. So and also the sergeant had joined them and reduced shock as well. And then on top of that they got the up and atom card, so they basically just used that just to pile into the remains of Hermann Lang and his men as he's been dragged off the field. What I did forget was that Bert Bromley over on the right flank, he was injured, so he should have rolled to see if some of his men would take him off the field. They did, so that reduces their section down to 1 man who has also just basically disappeared. So they're completely broken on the right flank anyway. So as I say, this is literally the last hurrah of the British cavalry at this point. They're rolling 12 dice against the Germans 11 because they moved basically using 6 dice in total to get to them. Let's see, we're looking killing on 6s and saving on 5 and shocking on 5s and 6s. So this could go terribly wrong or it could go okay. Let's just see what happens. So that's 3 kills and 2 shock on those Germans. Let's see if one of those kills is on their new corporal. 1, 2 or 3 it is. 9, no it isn't, so it's 3 of the rifles. So let's just quickly take those off while I remember. And then we also have 2 shock as well, so that takes them up to 3. So just get that in line. Let's see what the Germans do back. Germans got quite a lot of dice because they've charged in so far and they got basically all those dice extra. And they've killed 1, 2, 3, 4 and caused 1 shock on the Indian cavalry. So I put that shock on and let's just see where those casualties lie. So the Germans have won this by 1 anyway, so let me just put that shock on there, and we've got 4 kills. So let's see if those are on any of the big men. Let's see, 7, no it isn't, so it's 4 of the men. 1, 2, and there's actually only 3 in there, so it's going to have to be on one of the big men at least. One of those is going to have to take a hit. So let's just see which one it is. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the easiest way to do this. Roll it in there actually. 1, so it's on Sergeant Blackwall. See what happens to him. 3, he is lightly wounded, so that takes him down to status 2. But the British cavalry have lost this. They have lost it by 1, so they are thrown back 12 inches and they may act as desired. And with that, I'm going to leave it there because I don't think the Indian cavalry can actually do anything. They've only got 7, 11 horses left on. One of these are retreating. These is Bert Bromley, who's falling back anyway. These perhaps could have been drawn back into the battle. And then we've also got Lieutenant Millwall and Sergeant as well, and 2 corporals over there, but they're not going to do a great deal. That's what stopped them. Herman Lang, they are definitely the men of the match at this point. There was some small local success over here on the right flank where they were able to force back the German section, but the Germans still have another section over here. The Germans have lost 8 men. The Indians have lost 23 cavalry, so that's over half of their force, their original force. The Germans hold the field. The Indians are going to fall back off this. Well, what went wrong there? Let's have a think about some lessons learned. What should I have done? I think initially, when the Indian cavalry had the initiative right at the start, instead of trying to spot, they should have just piled straight into those blinds. And they would have revealed them, and if they would have been infantry, they would have probably cut them down quite heavily. When they were, the problem was the infantry were able to deploy over here and then start firing, and that was the issue, because that instantly wiped out almost a section of cavalry. So they were already down by a quarter even before anything had started, and also just taking hits and not being able to move forward really was the problem there, I think. An interesting game. It didn't go exactly the way I was expecting or hoping. I thought that the cavalry would have shown a little bit better elan in this one. Maybe would it have been better if they'd have got off and fired? I don't know. I don't think so, because there's no cover. They were relying on their speed to get across the table. I might try this scenario again at some point in the future. I'll certainly be using the cavalry again at some point in the future, maybe a 1918 battle, and see if we get a different result by trying a different tactic. First time I've used cavalry in the First World War, so I'm not too down on the fact that they did pretty poorly in this case. As I say, I should have really just pushed them forward straight into the into the blinds and just revealed them by contacting them. Really, that should have been the thing to do, I think. But anyway, if you've enjoyed this, it's been a bit different. And as I say, very, very different to my expectations, but still a fun game and an interesting game as well, watching these horses get massacred. If you've enjoyed it, please do subscribe. 84% of my viewers are not subscribers, so please do subscribe. It helps me out. Check out my Patreon. Also check out me on Twitter, and also Storm of Steel over on Facebook as well. Do a search for that. Thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed it, check out the other First World War videos on the channel, and also other Through the Mud and Blood videos as well. And I shall say farewell at that.